Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode. So, got a special one for all you sports fans out there. If any of you guys are into the old-timey golden era of Major League Baseball, talking about like the 1920s, like Shoeless Joe Jackson and all that stuff, Ty Cobb and all that, I got a cool one for you today because here in Vinton, Louisiana is the resting place, the grave of Mr. Ted Lyons, or Sunday Teddy, as they called him later in his career, and I'll tell you the story behind that. But pretty cool. I didn't even know he was buried here until recently, and it's pretty cool to have a Hall of Fame baseball player here in Southwest Louisiana. So without taking too long on this intro, I'm going to jump right in because I have a lot to tell you guys about him. He was also a Marine veteran, so Semper Fi to that, you know, that's special, near and dear to me. So I just thought it was, I couldn't pass this up. And so I'll tell you all about him. I'll show you his grave and maybe a little bit of B-roll around the cemetery while I talk about him. And I hope you enjoy it all. And let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's go. So here we go. In this beautiful headstone here rests Mr. Ted Amar Lyons, Captain U.S. Marine Corps, World War II, born December 28, 1900, and passed on July 25, 1986. Hall of Famer, a great pitcher. Indeed he was. You can read that. The spot I'm standing in here, I'm trying to avoid this water here. It rained heavily. And so I'm kind of standing like right up on the grave just to avoid being ankle deep in water. But Mr. Lyons led an interesting life, very, very interesting life. Baseball career was very solid. Played college ball at Baylor. Played in the league, in the majors for the same team his whole career and played many seasons. And just the fact that he was a Marine veteran, in my book, makes him even that much more special. But yeah, he's a starting pitcher, and he was he pitched a ton of complete games, and that was part of his specialty. And I say his specialty, but that was part of his legend. Was just, you know, he pitched, so even later in his career he was pitching complete games. He also served as a manager and coach, and 21 seasons with the White Sox altogether, and he only played for the White Sox. Also never played for the majors. He went straight from college to the pros, not 1 year in the minors. He's actually the franchise leader in wins, 20 or more wins 3 different times as a complete pitcher, or complete games, and that was in 1925, 27, and 1930. Made the Hall of Fame in 1955. And he's the 4th highest ERA. He has the 4th highest ERA, earned run average, among Hall of Fame pitchers. And he's the only one with more walks than strikeouts. And you imagine a Hall of Fame pitcher probably has a ton of strikeouts, but he's the only one. He's the only one that has more walks than strikeouts. And in a 1981 book that was published called 100 Greatest, I'm trying to clear my throat here. Greatest baseball players of all time, he was listed in that as one of those 100. Went to college at Baylor. 1923 he went pro. Skipped the minors altogether, and he's one of the first to debut in a doubleheader and win both. His debut was, you know, most pitchers when they debut, they might get thrown in later in the game or halfway through the game or something. So his debut was a full complete game, actually a doubleheader, so 2 complete games in a row in which he won both. And he's one of the first to ever do that. I mean, even these days, that's a feat, right? August 21st, 1926, he threw a no-hitter against the Red Sox, in which they won 6-0. And the game was only an hour and 45 minutes. When I read that, I was like, that's crazy. That's like the half of a baseball game right there, in any terms. That's just nuts. But May 4th, 1929, a 21-inning loss to the Detroit Tigers. The Detroit Tigers pitcher was George Yulee. And the two of those, they both pitched that complete game. They became the 10th pair to do so since the live era began in 1920. And which, so Ted here pitched 21 innings, and then Yulee pitched 20. And so some of the pitches that Ted liked to throw, like that he was known for, was a sailor, which for you old folks, I want to pause for a second and I want to see if you know what a sailor pitch is for you baseball fans out there. Do you know? Well, sailor, what it used to be called, is what's now known as a cut fastball. He was known for that. Also the knuckleball, curveball, and changeup. And after a 1931 injury that he had that he suffered on his arm, he kind of changed it up a little bit. He's still pitching the fastball, slow curveball, knuckleball, and an even slower curve that he used as a changeup. Interesting enough. And so he was pitching a lot of complete games. And so after that injury, his trainer and coach and all that, they kind of pulled him back and said, look, you're going to only do about 30 games a year, which helped him tremendously. And in that process, they pretty much scheduled him to pitch every Sunday, on Sundays only. And that aptly earned him the title or the nickname Sunday Teddy. And so he did very well with that, though. Like when he got to rest more, he had more effective games with that. That came along with that. So it helped him out. It helped him, probably gave him a few more, an elongated career after that. Because pitchers, like most pitchers, they get injured for the most part, all doing the same things, you know. In 1942, that was his 20th and final season. He led the league with a 2.10 ERA, which is pretty good, and completed every start. He threw the whole game. And so after that, so that was his last full season, basically. Last season for the most part. And then because in 1943, although he was exempt due to his age because he was like 43 years old, he still went to go serve in the Marine Corps, which a lot of them did back then. You know, you don't see that anymore. I could name maybe 2 or 3 athletes at the most who were in professional sports and who went to the military or chose to go to the military and serve, whether or not they came back to sports or not. You know, Pat Tillman comes to mind, and maybe 1 or 2 others if I sat and thought long enough. But unfortunately, we're not in those times anymore. You know, you don't see those things anymore. People are usually just, you know, athletes are basically athletes, and military guys are military guys, excuse me. And, you know, you just don't see the patriotism like you used to. That's my opinion. And I'm sure Mr. Ted here would agree with you because he left to go serve in the Marine Corps when he didn't have to. And, but yeah, he enlisted, and he served in the Pacific War, just like my grandfather at that exact same time. So he literally served, he might have served alongside of my grandfather, didn't even know it. Although, I don't know, who knows? My mom always said my grandfather said that he worked alongside the Marines a lot, or fought alongside the Marines a lot in that Pacific theater. And he respected them immensely. So he could have very well fought alongside Mr. Ted Lyons here. Who knows? But it's the exact same time in the exact same theater, which is awesome to me. And so in 1943, during the time that Ted was still in the Marines, the White Sox decided to not reissue or re-uniform his number to anybody else. They didn't retire it yet, but they decided to just not reissue it. Probably because they knew they were going to retire it at one time, or at one point. And so, which is pretty awesome. You know, by this time it was 20 years that he served in baseball, and he was still in the Marine Corps, and they were asking him, do you know if you're going to come back to baseball? And he was, like I said, after playing 20 years, he said, you know, if this war effort takes more than 2 to 3 more years, there's a good chance that we'll not come back to baseball, just because he'd be aging at that point. And so I guess maybe the war ended, basically in 45, 46, you know, and so I guess that was right in that cusp for him. And he came back and he played about 5 more games. Came back briefly in 46. So 46 is when he came back to baseball, and he did 5 games, and they're all complete games. Still stellar. I mean, a stud. 20 years later, he's pitching complete games still. You just don't see that. He did those 5 games with a 2.32 ERA. And, of course, the ERA, the earned run average, the more players that are earning runs off of you, that's not good. So the lower ERA, the better. And so there's my truck again, making its cameo in every video almost. Not everyone, but most of them, a lot of them. And so yeah, so that was, I guess he pretty much called it quits after that. He was done at that point. He had done 21 seasons in the big leagues, mostly a ton of complete games. In all that. So overall, his overall career records, his stats were, he finished with 260 wins and 230 losses. So about 60-40, something like that. 55-45, something like that. Ratio. 356 complete games, which is, that's a lot. 1,073 strikeouts. Nothing too shabby at all. I'd say, especially at that time. You probably didn't see pitchers doing that at that time. You talk about like people like Nolan Ryan, who came along, 30, 40 years after that, who were, Nolan Ryan hit 5,000 in the late 80s, early 90s. And you didn't see too much of that, especially at that time. 3.67 ERA lifetime. And ironically, on the offensive side, he hit 162 home runs. His RBIs and doubles and triples and all that are like in 9, 10, 15 range. And all of a sudden he's a stellar hitter too on top of that as a pitcher. So it's not a big wonder why this guy made the Hall of Fame. And then he kind of went on to manage and coach after that. He stayed on with the White Sox after that, and coached and managed with the meager 185 and 245 record. That was between 46, 47, and 48. Then he became a scout for Chicago White Sox for like another 20 years until 1967. So he spent just as long scouting as he did playing, basically, which I think is pretty cool. I've always thought scouting, of course, I don't know all the ins and outs and all the details of a life of a scout, but I always thought that being a scout would be the coolest thing to do if you're not able to play or after you play. But yeah, so July 25th, 1986, as you see here, he passed away in a nursing home in Sulphur, which Sulphur is part of Lake Charles, kind of neighbors, Lake Charles. They touch each other. They're one and the same pretty much. And a year later, the White Sox actually retired his number 16 number, which is pretty awesome. And so 1943, they stopped issuing it. And then in 1986, they retired it. So about 43 years later. And in 2013, the Bob Feller Act of Valor Award honored Ted as one of the 37 Hall of Fame members for his USMC service during World War II. Now, of course, the other 37 members aren't all in the Marine Corps, but, I had no idea that there was that many. There's 37 baseball Hall of Famers that served in the war, that served in the military. That is amazing. And I bet you that most of them are from that time frame. I'm sure that close to 0% of those, 0 to 2% of those are from anything after the 1950s or 60s, I bet. Which is pretty, I think that's to me, that's a huge award, to get awarded that Act of Valor Award. I just think it's amazing. And so, what a cool story. What an accomplished man. And then he had the gall to go and serve in the military, especially the Marine Corps, which is near and dear to me, when he didn't even have to. He was like 42, 43 years old. That's my age now. I'm 42 years old. And yeah, sometimes I think about going back to the Marine Corps, but also served 8 years already. And I also haven't been a major league pitcher or professional athlete at all. So it's, that's much different. But he just comes from that generation, and it was definitely the best generation, still the greatest generation in my eyes and a lot of people's eyes. A lot of people would agree with that. That's why they're called the greatest generation, because they did stuff like that. They did things like that when they didn't have to. And this is one of the older cemeteries in the area. There's some very old graves here. Again, I don't want to go and zoom in on people's names and all that stuff, but I might do some B-roll here of some older graves and just kind of show you how pretty, and I think that the older they are, the more beautiful they are. So very quaint though. It's kind of surrounded by this wooded area. And when you pull in the entrance over there, as you can see there, you pull in right over here, and there's one entrance, you know, side way, right, or side street right there. So you pull in over there, you come in the second one, take a right, and it's right when you see these two blondish looking tombstones here, we're like basically right across. And you'll see some Lyons here, and Ted's this one right here with the dark colored concrete with the light colored marble. I guess that's granite, or yeah, granite maybe, for those experts out there. Kind of a two-tone hitstone. That's right next to this tree right here. All right, guys. Well, I hope that was a treat for you as much as it was for me. Oh, and by the way, the name of the cemetery is Big Woods Cemetery here, and the address says Edgerly, like Edgerley, something like that, Edgerly, but it's pretty much in Vinton, Vinton. And yeah, so Hall of Fame Major League Baseball player that served in the United States Marine Corps, just like yours truly, when he didn't even have to. That's awesome. And it was a pleasure for me to meet him today, and I hope it was a pleasure for you guys to meet him also. And so with that, I'll go ahead and sign off. I hope you're having a wonderful evening like I am. Slightly overcast today, still pretty though, feels great. Hope everything's well, and that you guys, I hope you're enjoying the videos. I hope you enjoy the channel, and if you do so, like always, if you are enjoying everything I'm putting out, feel free to like the videos and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell, because when you hit the notification bell, you get notifications on your phone whenever I post videos like this. And so if you like the kind of thing and you want to know whenever I post videos, then there you go. That's the way to do it. Also, if you want to further support the channel, you can go to my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/travelwithoutacause. It's easy to find, it's easy to work, and you can just donate a few dollars one time, or you can do it a certain amount every month, whatever, and it helps the channel. It helps me do things like this and come to places like this, which is an hour and a half away from my home, you know. So it just helps me out, and it helps, you know, if you're enjoying what I'm doing here, then this is how I'm able to do it. And so I love doing it, so I hope I can keep doing this for a long time. And with that, have a great evening. Take care, guys. I love you all, and see you on the next one. And goodbye from Vinton, Louisiana, visiting Mr. Ted Lyons himself. Goodbye, folks.